Welcome to the Manufacturing Matrix podcast for Fuuz, the manufacturing cloud industrial platform. My name is Craig Scott. I'm the founder CEO, and I have a couple of coworkers here with me today. We've got Lance.
Hello, hello.
Boy, you've been on the show so many times. Long-time listener, several time
visitor.
Awesome. And then we've got Brandon. So Brandon's newer to the team. Go ahead and give us a little bit of your background. Introduce yourself a little bit.
Yes, I'm Brandon Peterson. I have worked at Fuuz now for about 2 months.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But veteran.
I am gold certified in Ignition, and I've worked as a premier integrator for about 3.5 years. And I was doing other manufacturing related software development before then. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're a good fit.
Yeah, I think so.
It's been great having Brandon on the team. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yep. So, and that's perfect for what we want to talk a little bit about today is we want to kind of compare and contrast a little bit between the Fuuz platform and Ignition.
Yeah.
So a little bit of the backstory there is before we actually developed the Fuuz platform, we were platinum Ignition integrators.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we used it a lot.
Yep.
Not a bad tool.
No.
Great SCADA platform. Not made for MES or WMS or all the things that we do. So, but you got a lot more hands-on experience with Ignition, to date than you do with the Fuuz platform. But we're definitely curious to kind of hear some of your feedback. Good, bad, ugly. What do we do that's good? What do we do that's ugly? And just talk to us a little bit about where you see Fuuz kind of fitting in the ecosystem. And, we coexist with Ignition, places we replace it. Let's just see what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so it's the two platforms are surprisingly similar and at the same time surprisingly different. They're both platforms that you can develop your own custom apps with. And biggest difference that, you notice right away is that Fuuz is hosted. You don't have to worry about managing your own servers or,
upgrades.
Upgrades, yeah. Maintenance, downtime, that sort of thing. It's just always up.
Yep. As Lance would say, batteries included.
Batteries, yep. I love that. Good phrase, good phrase. Yep.
Yeah.
Day zero. So I'm an OT guy, right?
Yeah.
Working in a plant, and plant manager stops by my desk and says, "Man, I don't know what my OEE is." You've got this fantastic idea, right? You're going to help the plant manager out. So you're going to solve his problem. So you go online, you find Ignition, you download it on your laptop, you install some Postgres or MySQL, get it up and running, right? Connect to your machine.
Yep.
So it's a different approach than what we do at Fuuz, right? Being hosted, as you said, and while, we don't need the infrastructure, but the way I see a lot of folks in OT using Ignition to start with is really to develop a proof of concept.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of that.
It's almost freeware. Every 2 hours you can reset the license, right? Not a lot of barriers to entry because you don't have to talk to a salesperson. You don't have to go through, you don't have to get demos. You don't need anyone's approval. Other than maybe IT to install it on your local machine, maybe. Depends on how high up within the org you are. Yeah. I know at Fuuz we need IT for everything, but so I think it's a different approach, and I think it's well adopted in the OT space really because of that. Because unfortunately, you came from that space, and a lot of guys don't have budgets to work with. You just have a problem to solve, and you're at the plant, and things got to happen quickly.
Yeah, and Ignition is good at that. It is good at going from zero to I fixed my one problem.
Yep.
But when you want to build something bigger, Ignition is capable of that. It's a platform. You can build whatever you want with it. But, where do you start? You know, you kind of have to know as much as a developer would about what you want to build.
Proper techniques.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of proper development skill sets are really born more in the IT space than they are typically in OT space, right? We're all problem solvers, but have a different training background a lot of times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way I look at it, OT is really focused on solving the problem right in front of them, and can often kind of maybe miss the bigger picture or the long term. Not that they aren't focused on it, but that's kind of the emphasis. And then you know, with IT, it's more of how can I solve this in the most general case?
Right.
How can I solve this in a way that, you know, solves all future problems?
Yeah, makes the problem never come back again.
Exactly.
And we always, you know, take a lean to security, scalability, reliability, all of the abilities where you're trying to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Right. So Ignition's great at that. I think businesses in general over many, many decades have gone to tools like Ignition, Excel.
Excel's
How many businesses run on Excel?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Ignition to me is in a lot of ways there's parallels there, right? It's like it's a tool that's easily accessible. It solves my problem, my immediate need. But it's probably not a great idea to run your whole business on Excel.
Correct. Yeah.
Yep. Would not recommend it.
Yeah. And therefore I would also go as far as to say is I may not run a large enterprise on Ignition, right? You could. I mean, you could solve a lot of point solutions, but it may not be the right tool for the job
Yeah.
in all cases.
Yeah, like scalability is one of those issues that you run into when you don't have your own. I'm going back to the cloud hosted thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, scalability is handled for you. You just make your app. You don't, and it just works.
Yeah.
You process
Absolutely.
as much data or whatever as you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, we worry about the disk size storage. We worry about the throughput of the flows, the data flows, the processes. We worry about, spinning up new replicas of, compute services as needed, all that kind of stuff. I don't even know how scalability would work in Ignition, except maybe just give it a bigger server.
Just throw resources
Right.
at
I
it.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
There's no horizontal scalability, I can't imagine.
Yeah, that's
So-
that's what it is. It's mainly vertical scaling.
Yeah.
You can kind of duplicate a project and put it on another
Sure.
server.
Right. Run two entirely disconnected copies of something.
Exactly.
Right. But yeah.
Yeah, but then you get concurrency issues and
Right. Yeah.
How am I balancing data in one versus another? And
Yep.
yeah,
You're very quickly at software architecture.
Right.
Very- very
you're
quickly.
very quickly
Very
going
quickly.
past solving a problem, and now you've created a world of problems that you might not have the resources to resolve, and so now you
Yeah.
could be putting your company at pretty great risk.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to a conversation I think we had a while ago about prototypes to production and just
Yeah.
there's a large gap between something that's a prototype and solves a specific problem and sort of demonstrates value, as compared to something that is ready to be deployed across an enterprise,
Yeah.
and as you say, secure and scalable and reliable.
Yep.
So
that reminds me too. You're talking about prototypes. Well, there's a build QA and production environment with Fuuz.
yeah,
Yeah.
Where development best practices are built in. You're able to try
Yeah.
things out and see what works, see what doesn't, without affecting your production system.
Yep.
And you don't have to set that up yourself.
yep,
And you're not starting from ground zero either. That's the other thing. Our MES app gives you a place to start from. You
Yeah.
know, where I was hired on the team to develop the MES app and continue to make it better, but it's never like the end goal. Like it's not going to be
There's
the
no
end all.
done.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
and it's going to work differently for each customer.
Right.
So
Yeah. Deploying software like this that can be horizontally and vertically scalable, and then also within that have pluggable applications that can scale for the customer as well as a pretty daunting, challenging task, but I do like that. That's one of the big differences I think that we have is a lot of stuff is baked out of the box with Fuuz, like roles, security, permissions, user management, single sign-on. It's hybrid. We have the gateway,
Yep.
but we are primarily cloud. And I think a lot of manufacturers that want to get Industry 4.0 or 5.0 or 12.0, whatever, want to eventually get, everybody knows you got to get to the cloud eventually.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like a thing like it was 20 years ago. Like you have to get there. That's where business is done now. Oracle is in the cloud.
Yeah.
SAP is in the cloud. There's no more on-prem. All the legacy on-prem enterprise systems are all cloud. So why shouldn't your industrial applications be cloud too? Right? As long as you have that built-in resiliency,
Yeah.
keep going when the lights are out.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back too to where Ignition fits in versus Fuuz. You know, because the two, while they have a lot of similarities, they aren't necessarily like at odds with each other. They can work together.
Right. It's not one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's both. Yep.
You know, one thing I like about Ignition is that you can make your own HMI for a machine or, you know, a couple of machines.
Yep.
And then, you know, it works really well for that application. You know, it's in all the ways that Ignition is good at the quick development, the prototyping. But yeah, and it is local. There are ways to put it on the cloud, obviously, but that's where it shines.
Yep.
I think you mentioned a SCADA platform as well, right? As a SCADA platform, that's not something that we really make a point to.
It's not what we aspire
That's not our
to
goal.
be.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So we have some of those capabilities in our device gateway, but you know, I think most customers, if they came to us and said, you know, we want to use Fuuz as our SCADA layer, we would probably tell them, we probably shouldn't. You know, wouldn't generally recommend it. At a small scale, it might be okay. But
I think there's different needs out there.
Yeah.
You know, a self-contained manufacturing facility, right? That's churning out widgets. Having an on-premise SCADA that's doing machine-to-machine communication, process control makes a lot of sense. If you have a distributed oil and gas, right?
Right.
You've got machines out in the field that are communicating, you know, over cellular or whatever.
Yeah. Or satellite. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want that in the cloud?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's cases where I could argue that our solution is actually a much better fit than anything that's on premise.
Fair. Yeah.
Because we're always on. 365, 24/7. We are always on. There's no, all of our customers are on the same version at all times. So there's no update, patch, pain, migration, V7, V8. Re-implementation, vision to perspectives, complete redo. There's none of that with Fuuz. So there are some, and I think that's where you get beyond the solving the point problem and going to something that's more scalable for a larger organization is having something like a Fuuz that once you deploy it, it's deployed. Period.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think going back to that OEE example, you know, Fuuz does have the ability to communicate with PLCs through our gateway. But you know, when you have a middleware like Ignition that can help with that control layer, well, it is also a great entering point for data to get up into the cloud.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we don't do SFCs, right? We don't do ladder logic. That's not the realm that we play in. We are really a pretty wide level 3 horizontal system, warehouse management, MES, maintenance, quality, right? All of the things that you need out of various different level 3 software components that you typically would go buy separately, integrate with Ignition. Now you can just use one platform. And if you don't have Ignition and you don't have a need for sequential function charts and you don't have a need for some of the things it does really well, then our gateway probably does everything you need.
Yeah.
There are a couple other things. We were chatting about this yesterday. And there were a couple other things that came up. One was something that I think we do particularly well in the Fuuz platform is our data modeling capabilities. And the fact that you go from a visual drag and drop ERD design, and then you click a deploy button, and 15 seconds later, you've got a complete GraphQL API that you can use. And another 2 minutes later, you can have a screen for that, or you can just consume that API directly if you just want to use it as kind of a component. And I have to imagine, Ignition doesn't have built-in data storage capabilities, right? You connect it to a SQL server, right?
I mean, UDTs are kind
Well,
of.
I guess that's I mean,
kind of, sort of, but it's.
It does have built-in SQLite.
Fair enough, right?
Which again is great for that lightweight application.
Yeah.
but
Right.
I've had to become a mini
DBA.
database expert
Yep.
in a few different, MySQL, SQL Server.
So I mean, so when you're designing and putting together schema for, like, you're using, I assume, just STL, right? Like create table, you've got to like build those schemas, the foreign keys, all of that in whatever SQL flavor happens to be the one that you're using.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
There are some free limited online build your own diagram things, but
Sure,
those don't always translate to SQL.
Yeah,
and
right.
Don't always translate to the flavor of SQL that you're using.
Yeah.
But to have that, all in one, it is really nice.
Yeah.
And it's another feature in that I think is pretty cool is how you can, to create a relationship, you just like drag a line from one table to the other.
If you can draw lines, you can build an app in Fuuz. That's what
That's
we
our
said.
brief. Yeah.
You can draw lines.
Yeah, and then the API will handle all of the nasty details of like relating between collections and sort of resolving all of like joins, right? SQL joins, all of the pain of trying to build a big complicated SQL query. We built our whole GraphQL ORM layer to handle all of that for you, right?
Yeah, so I do like me a big complex SQL
That's
query.
I respect a big complicated SQL. I've written a fair number of really crunchy SQL queries in my time.
I really prefer GraphQL.
I don't remember the last time I wrote a join. Like it just with GraphQL, you just write what you want.
Just
Right.
open it.
If it's in a different table,
object. Yeah,
So
Okay.
much better.
yeah,
Yeah. Let's. Yeah.
it is nice.
Yep.
Yeah, I was doing a demo for Zach from 4.0 Solutions of the schema designer, you know, and his reaction, if I can say this on air, was, "That's fucking sick." So
yeah,
coming from guys like yourself and Zach, who like this is the world you live in, and you've never really been exposed to a platform like Fuuz, because there is no platform like Fuuz. It's the only thing.
yeah,
But it's just interesting and very cool to like get your perspectives, right? Because we approached it from a top down. Ignition was he was a systems integrator, right? The founder of Ignition, so working with controls, working with all that plant level stuff, and we started in the ERP and worked our way down the other direction. So we have. We started with the security, scalability, reliability first, instead of thinking about it as after the fact, right? Because I think a lot of these OT projects struggle to get these 4.0 initiatives struggle to get legs, because OT can take it so far. Ultimately, you need IT's approval to take it across the enterprise, and if it's not scalable, they're not going to let you do it.
yeah. They're going to make you check all those boxes. Hopefully.
I can't tell you the number of proof of concepts I've made.
Yeah.
Sometimes they go further, and a lot of times they don't.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of great ideas
Yeah.
that could really help and really benefit a lot of people. And I think that's the thing that excites me the most about Fuuz, is that all of those great ideas, they're no longer a proof of concept. Once you do it in Fuuz, you can roll that out across the entire organization, and that it's safe, secure, scalable, reliable.
Yep.
because all of that stuff is secondary and you don't have to know how to write any SQL. I mean, maybe people love writing SQL.
Well, I do, but I don't think that I am our average customer.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
But once you taste GraphQL, you might not want to go back. Yeah.
Actually, sorry.
I wanted to bring up flows, but
I was going to say, you just mentioned you're not our average customer. And I think that's a really interesting point of comparison that your career trajectory was from an Ignition developer over to a software engineer at our company, right?
Yeah.
You didn't you are a software engineer. That's the level of kind of knowledge and experience you needed in order to do Ignition development, at sort of an enterprise scale, right?
Yeah.
And that translated pretty well over to what we do in terms of the software engineering mindset and that's not something you would expect your average end user to have of your average OT user or our customers. The point of our platform is that you don't have to be a software engineer in order to use it. So that was a really interesting. I kind of had that realization the other day.
We've seen a lot of projects that we've come into to kind of save or rescue where they were done by non-software engineers on the plant floor. I think of one recently. It was a metals company that I visited, and they had deployed Tulip, and it didn't scale, and it was 30 work centers on the plant floor. But the problem was that again, Tulip doesn't have its own data storage persistence. It's not a platform. It's not cloud, not the way we're cloud, Tulip. But, it just didn't scale because you have all of these little clients running all over the shop floor, and they're trying to communicate to one source of truth, right, the ERP. And it's so that was a real pain point, for this company. But we see that like all the time where proof of concepts can become the production environment. But they never should have.
Yeah,
they never should have.
They never should have.
Yeah.
But that's the problem with doing things at kind of a micro scale at a plant. You have people responsible for certain things that are asking for certain things, and all you're trying to do is help them out. And you do that, and then ultimately that just causes a lot of technical debt and confusion within the organization. And how are you guys calculating OEE in your plant? Oh, we do it this way.
Yep.
How do you drive operational efficiency and productivity and growth and profits in a large company when everybody's doing their own thing a different way and there's no system, there's no platform governing the operational model?
Yeah.
Especially for bigger companies.
Yeah. Anyone with more than 2 locations.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
that is really it. A lot of larger organizations, every plant is operating kind of on its own.
Yep.
Especially growth through acquisition, right?
Yeah. So how do you drive optimization, as a C-suite team, right? You have all these aspirations and, everybody now is talking about AI. I don't know. Okay, that'll be another podcast.
That's a separate.
But these directives come from the top down a lot of times, and it becomes an impossible task to give them what they're asking for because the way every plant's doing it, they're all operating differently.
Yeah, and ERP down into MES is you described kind of where we started as a company, and so we have this sort of top-down starting approach. But one thing that's pretty cool is that I'm only on our engineering team, which is half of Fuuz.
Yeah.
The other half is our integration team.
Yeah, delivery. Yep.
Yeah, so they're the ones helping out the customers, actually diving into those smaller problems and then working them into bigger solutions in Fuuz.
Yeah. Our goal, right, isn't to not let the people on the floor solve their problems. The goal is to enable them, right?
Right.
By making it so they don't have to worry about
solve them better.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They don't have to worry about all of the things that take deep technical expertise.
Yeah.
They can focus on, what's the business problem, what's the business solution, for my specific case, and then.
Yep.
we handle from there.
And we do proof of concepts in Fuuz all the time. I mean, there's plenty of ways in our platform to do something down and dirty,
Yeah.
just quick and dirty, just get it done.
Yep.
Right. You can run a makerspace off Fuuz if you want to.
Yeah.
We talked about that before.
Slap some schema together, generate some screens.
Yeah.
We had some customer demo that you were preparing for. You're like, yeah, I just threw the screen together in a few minutes and we're up and running. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Ryan and I talk a lot about dreaming of a way to get a demo environment available for Fuuz that people can access or sign up for without contacting us, without putting in a credit card. So
That's our biggest hurdle.
to try to lower that barrier to entry. Because if we can offer something like what Ignition can with their 2-hour demo,
Right.
that would be game changing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's not just that we're hosted, right? It's that we're a multi-tenancy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not cheap, right?
Yeah.
It's not cheap to offer
And it
that
kind of
stuff.
flies in the face of just download me for free.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
so
it's sort of-
it's a tough challenge to solve, but we'd love to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be something that we'll definitely work on. Anybody out there that, is interested, I mean, just, call us. We might be able to work out a side deal, but yeah. So you were going to say something about flows, Brandon.
Yeah,
you had
I
a
was,
thought
yeah.
and you probably lost it by now. But
No, I was actually just thinking about how to bring it up again.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so flows were a pretty new, not necessarily new concept. I've seen kind of low code things before. You know, when I was in high school, like Scratch, for anyone who happens
Right.
to know what that is, low code. That was how I learned programming. And like flows are really cool. They're just how you get things done. Anything custom you can do with the flow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different built-in tools and connectors. It is really intuitive. Like
we can run them at the edge, right? Which I think is important to
down on the
note.
gateway.
So when you do lose internet connection, your business logic just continues to chug right along. So, don't lose internet for like a month at a time.
You would not recommend.
But I think that's a good point because so many of our customers and maybe future customers, like all of their ERP systems, all the L4, L5 is in the cloud, right? BI is in the cloud, ERP is in the cloud. We need to get the data in the cloud. So, but we want this like, harmonized or like unified vision from, level 0 all the way up. And I haven't seen any other than our customers that truly have a solution that kind of scales that whole entire vertical ISA pyramid stack concept. There's MESs that do just the thing, and there's warehouse management that does just the thing, but there's nothing like what's the glue that holds them together? I think people try to use Boomi or, but I mean, that's all batch, not real time, not easy to use, extremely expensive. So I think we've got an interesting position in the market to help people actually accomplish a enterprise scale transformation.
the number of connectors that we have to different database types and other.
All the pre-built cloud connectors for different ERPs, PLM, databases. We got a BigQuery one coming soon.
Yeah, very soon.
There's several dozen.
Anything you can run in Fuuz is like automatically also an API. Like flows are APIs just by default.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
You just learned that recently.
I
right?
did,
Yeah.
and it's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, because we were sitting there and you're like, gosh, what we really need to be able to do is generate an API that we can call from another system. We're like, yeah, that's a
There
flow.
you go. Yeah.
It's a flow.
They are truly a utility, multi-purpose utility knife, Swiss Army knife. That's the word I'm looking for.
But so much more than just a put get. I mean, it's not really doing it justice to say that's an API.
Yeah.
It's so much more like it's a, remote function call. It's like you can do so much with the flow that a typical API you can't, but it's still restful. And
And the whole thing is an event driven. So anytime you call an API, whether it's from a screen you made in Fuuz or from some external system, that can trigger anything to happen.
Mhm.
Yep.
Many things to happen. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was doing a demo just yesterday for a partner, and I went into the screen designer. It's not a flow, but screen designer, and they're like, what if we want, when the user hits that button, we want it to do all these things that are rattling off a bunch of things. And I'm like, well, I selected the button and I went to the action. I go, so I'm going to add an action. What do you want it to do? Like in like 30 seconds, their minds were blown. They're like, you can do all of that off of one button. Like we can go to Microsoft Dynamics and update this and do that. And
Sure. Yeah.
phone home and whatever. I'm like, yeah, sure.
You want to?
So yeah, it's all there. There's no limits, which can be challenging. Requires a fair bit of restraint when building an app. But I think that's a lot of the reason why we see customers coming to us from systems like Ignition or a Tulip or some of the other things that are out there. Which again, we're happy to coexist with, but when that tool has kind of gotten you to a point that you need something much more, we've got the much more, I think.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the difference between the, kind of pricing model, so to speak, as well. Like we don't have a 2-hour demo because we're the type of company where we invite you over and show you what we can do, and you go away from it with a team of people behind you ready to help you take on your challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we, one day we do aspire to get to that 2-hour demo, but
It would be nice.
yeah, it's a little bit of a work in process. But going into, it's definitely a different customer that we're often selling into, right? More of the IT side, the C-level, that are looking for a platform for the enterprise. We don't get a lot of the shop floor up folks like OT knocking on our door, right? That's just not where their head goes initially. They're like, I got to solve this problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Let me find a cloud platform development as cloud development platforms.
Yeah.
Like
That's not really what they're all about, but I think for the executives out there that want to transform the business and drive efficiency and optimization, they need to be thinking about a platform. As this whole conversation, right, has kind of evolved. It's like, yes, all of the reasons why the platform is significant and important to an enterprise is all the reasons why Ignition is great for a small proof of concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you go back and recommend to your former employer that they use? I know they're already using it. So, but
Loaded question.
Yeah,
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's interesting because I won't say their name, but they're not using it for a lot of the reasons that our customers use it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's in a completely different part of the stack than
Right.
Ignition. They do happen to be using both.
Yeah.
And I was helping to manage the Ignition side of it and learning to become an architect of software and not just a point solution guy. And it was hard.
Yeah.
So I'll ask this question.
Uh-oh.
If you knew a year ago what you know now about Fuuz, how much would you have done in Ignition versus Fuuz?
Like my gut is to just say, I'd still want to do Ignition. I'd want to take the lessons I learned from Fuuz.
Yeah, and do Ignition different.
Yeah. In my specific case, like budget obviously like applies, and we already had Ignition servers running, so developing on them didn't cost them anything more than it was to just pay my salary.
Right. So I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here a little bit, is that like we can coexist as we did quite easily, but oftentimes we find that our customers don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
You didn't know what you didn't know.
Yeah.
And maybe saying go back a year wasn't maybe the right thing. Maybe say go back before or to the time the decision was made to start, implementing Ignition globally.
Oh yeah, that's a different question.
Right? Okay. So if you were going to because what you guys did was you took a proof of concept and you tried to enterprise-wide a proof of concept.
Times like 10.
Times 10.
Yep.
So
Like we had 10 different proof of concepts.
that's the way it always happens,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because all these different disparate divisions and you grow through acquisition, everybody's done their own little thing. No one ever goes back and redoes it.
Yeah.
But if you could go back in time far enough to say, we need to make a decision, guys, and you could talk to the CIO and go, there's this, or there's the red pill or the blue pill, like the blue one.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is.
Yeah, well, I would pick Fuuz because it's, I go back to the software architecture thing. Like, I was able to schedule a couple of meetings with inductive automation to like help kind of tease out what that architecture should look like. And
With Travis?
No, it was whoever.
Because he's pretty genius. Yeah, I will give him that. I mean, they've got some really smart people there, and it's a great platform.
Yeah,
We're definitely not knocking the platform. We just think about it at a different kind of enterprise scale, perspective.
Yeah, like what we were kind of lacking, like we had a lot of skill in that IT department, right? We had very smart DBAs who were managing literally enterprise level SQL servers. Similarly for all of our physical infrastructure, server team or cloud team and all that. But it was kind of just me when it came to Ignition. Like I had Rich helping me, but he was still just trying to manage the things that were going wrong with all of our different point solutions, trying to keep everything running. So my job was to come in and do that architect side. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what the company policies were and how to do security right using our internal tools and all that. But I wouldn't have had to do any of that if we just started with Fuuz.
Right.
So that's kind of
the teams of people that you'd have to work with to get things done really narrows down too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no DBAs. There's no application server managers. There's no, get a request from IT. Oh, we have to bring an integrator in. We got to get access to just a lot of those kinds of things that you got to struggle through. Yeah. Those are all the design decisions that we made. Because when we started, it was like, I remember waiting 4 months to get VPN access.
Yeah.
Before we could even start the project. And we had just resources sitting there,
eager to start. But
And I understand why we had to wait. I mean, there's a lot of red tape and security and all this stuff you got to jump through. But yeah, a lot of these, a lot of the Ignition shops, unfortunately, don't have folks in-house like you. So they rely on outside vendors, which even further complicates access to systems and, all of that stuff. So yeah, a lot of things that I think, if we had an opportunity to kind of talk to the right levels within the organization about what is it that you're trying to achieve across the organization, let's talk about this from like a transformation perspective rather than attacking little point.
One specific problem. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. It's just tough, to
and
do that.
What you said about, tackling it from a digital transformation perspective, like that's kind of why I joined Fuuz. I was able to get a lot done at the last company I was at, and I enjoyed a lot of the work that I was doing, but I was trying to look at it from this bigger picture and, how do we put this all together in one, and just kind of ran into systemic sort of roadblocks. There were a lot of people, individuals who were trying to, think in that mindset and who were pushing for that sort of thing, but it wasn't a company-wide agenda.
Yeah.
if you have Fuuz and you have that company-wide, hey, we want to actually move into this Industry 4.0 space, you know, that's how you get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the bullet train to Industry 4.0.
Pretty much.
But yeah, so anybody out there that might be listening here to your buddy Brandon, your former colleague, you know, Fuuz can still help.
Yeah.
We can still help you knock
not
those
too
barriers down. It's not too late. And you don't have to scrap what you've done. You know, plug right into Ignition.
Yeah.
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 But no, that's good. Anything, Lance, that you would...
We've covered a lot.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground. Yeah.
No, that was really exciting. I think that was a great conversation. And, you know, I appreciate the perspectives. We've really been, you know, growing the team a lot and adding a lot of different types of resources. We've always been very IT heavy, but are really starting to pull in, you know, a lot of folks with more of that shop floor OT experience. So I think the more you get your eyes and hands on our system and the feedback and the innovation, and it's just been great to have you on the team.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Really-
very excited to have you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And likewise, the team has been great to work with. Like the mindset that you guys all have, just like asking for feedback and meaning it, is really cool.
Yeah.
You know, I'm glad to be a part of it.
Awesome. Well, we're looking forward to seeing more wonderful things. So the next WMS and MES app coming your way very soon. So very exciting. So thanks for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks for having me.
That's right.